Welcome to another episode of The Artsy Raven, a show about writing and publishing with your host, J.F. Garrard.
Welcome to another episode of the Artsy Raven. Today on our show, we have artist Mary Sui Yee Wong. So the Richmond Art Gallery is presenting Restless by Nature, Mary Sui Yee Wong, 1990s to the present, from April 12th to June 8th, 2025, this year in Vancouver. Now, Mary is a Montreal-based multidisciplinary artist who immigrated to Canada from Hong Kong in 1963. Working across disciplines that include sculpture, installation, video, and performance, Wong endeavors to defy fixedness in art as an act of resistance. She has been on the board member of Obero, Optica, and Arcule. She was a former president of Little Pear Garden Collective, a Chinese performance group in Toronto, and is an honorary member of the Youth Sing Music Association in Montreal since 1990. She is known as an advocate and mentor with the Chinese community. Wong completed her MFA at Concordia University, where she has taught for the past 2 decades. She was also on the affiliate faculty and co-founder of the Socially Engaged Arts program at Goddard College in Vermont. So welcome, Mary.
Thank you for having me.
Now, can you tell us a little bit about your art and how you get started? Because I know, I do sound very stereotypical. Well, a lot of Asian parents don't seem to like art very much. Like, I know it's like a practical sense, that they feel like art is hard to make a living, that's all.
Well, I think that's a really good question because maybe that's a place to start rather than how I got started is what actually inspired me to even be an artist. I come from a background where my father is a master musician in Cantonese opera, and he was very instrumental in inspiring me to believe that, creative expression was really important. I grew up, surrounded by singers and performers, and I never thought of myself as a visual artist per se, but there was always something about that environment as a child, which, animated my life very differently than just kind of going to school and living my everyday life. Weekends were always spent around a lot of elders singing and performing. Um, and at one point when I wanted to be an opera star, my father said, I don't think so. Because as you say, parents, especially immigrant parents, that's not what they wish for their children. They want me to become well, adapted and maybe become a doctor or something. But I wanted to be a performer, and my dad was like not against it. And I even when I was in high school was very interested in drawing and painting. And I remember one summer, instead of like going and working in the strawberry fields picking strawberries, I decided to take an animation class over the summer. My father didn't talk to me for a week
Oh boy.
because it was like, what do you think you're doing instead of working hard? You're going to do this art thing. It took a few, years, but, I went back to school much later in life. So in the beginning, I never actually kind of like challenged my parents' kind of perception of art. I just did the straight and narrow, be a good Chinese daughter thing.
So how old were you when you came to Canada from Hong Kong?
Well, I was 7 when I immigrated, but I didn't actually start practicing art until I was in my late 30s.
Oh yeah, yes, after you have your steady job and you can tell your
That's
parents I can
right.
live.
That's right. That's right. Made some money. I could prove that I could make money, that all their efforts in kind of coming and bringing me to Canada wasn't wasted.
So what did you do? Like, what was the fine line like that you crossed to become like the artist,
Oh,
do you think?
there was a really specific moment. I worked, as a teenager, I started always having summer jobs because it was a way that, we had to kind of help out at home. And I made a lot of, money in different kind of part-time jobs and so on and so forth. And I was working finally at a research center, cancer clinic here in Vancouver for about 10 years. I was in the epidemiology department. And there was one point where I was working in a job where I was no longer, I needed to have more educational professional development. And it was either going back to school to study more sciences or something else. And it was a real pivotal turn in my life where I had to ask myself, well, can I do the science? And knowing that I didn't do well in physics and that I flunked chemistry,
Oh
I
God,
was
I
like,
hated
okay,
organic chemistry, but yeah.
okay. But I could draw and paint. Like I really like I knew I had a a gift in that area. So I decided, well, I mean, I'm 30 something years old. I know that I can make a living. Why not? And in fact, I actually had to sit my father down when I was 32 and I was about to leave and explain to him and reassure him that my decision wasn't just kind of like a flippant, that he had brought, yes, thankful that he brought us to Canada, but that I had more skill sets that I could, behind me, one being the language skill set, right? Be able to survive. Because as a musician, he came to Canada to teach music, but he was never really able to make a full-on career of it because he didn't have language skills. Because
Hmm.
he was stuck in the Chinese enclave, and it was rather frustrating for him.
Oh yeah, I totally understand. Coming from
Right.
an
But
immigrant
I said to him,
family
well,
myself.
yeah, you have to kind of, have courage and believe that I have more opportunities. That's why you
Yes.
came here, to give me these opportunities. So yeah, I took off to Montreal. I had to leave the city to do that.
Yeah.
It's a pivotal point, but I had been also taking art classes all along part-time while I was working full-time, pursuing my little hobby
Hmm.
artist. Yeah.
So what did you start in first? I mean, you seem to do a lot of things, sculpture, photography, video. So what did you start off with first, and how come you branched out to other things?
Well, when I went over to Montreal and I was in the undergrad program, I was predominantly majoring in sculpture. And at the time, I was not particularly interested in making, like stone carvings or, welding metal and so on and so forth. And I went back into art school because I wanted to kind of fill a gap that I thought existed, which was not enough art that was talking about the Asian diasporic experience. And so I thought, well, what works for me, not only conceptually, but also materially, was to draw from my own culture. So I took papermaking when I was in Vancouver here with Sharon Ewan, and I thought, well, that's a material that has a real cultural specificity and an ephemeral and tactile quality. So I started making sculptural objects with handmade folded paper, handmade paper, and then I started working with rice, and I started working with a variety of materials that I thought could resonate with more than one cultural audience, right? And eventually I just branched out because I was never someone who felt I had to kind of lock myself into a specific discipline. I'm
Mm.
not just a sculptor, I'm not just a this. And one of the lovely things about Concordia was that it was always very interdisciplinary in terms of the curriculum. So I started doing fibers classes, which had the paper making, which had print and dye fabric. So I was able to use dye for different materials and do sculptures and then started branching into like performance and video.
Now, for the art that you're displaying at the Richmond Art Gallery, do you have a particular favorite piece, or is that a
Oh,
hard
wow, that's
question?
a hard one. Well, I mean, it's sort of like, having your latest born, you can always say that's your most favorite because it's the newest thing in your life. And, and I would say that right now I'm really tickled by my own new it's not yet, it's in the gallery, but to creating that piece during performance. And there's something about that particular work that really resonates because it's very current. It's, dealing with current issues and contemporary moment. And I'm also excited about the possibility of where that work could take me in other projects in the future. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us. And for anyone that's interested in Mary's work, we'll have the links below. And it's only until June 8th, but I'm sure we'll see your work elsewhere in the near future.
Yeah. And also, I just launched for the first time after 60 some odd years my first website. So you're welcome to visit my work there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
For more upcoming episodes of the Artsy Raven about writing and publishing, visit us at jfgarage.com/arpodcast. A reminder to Patreon subscribers that there's bonus content available for every episode on the Patreon website. If you enjoyed the show, you can show your appreciation by buying us some digital coffee. The Artsy Raven is produced by J.F. Garrard. The voice in the show's introduction is Chris Gorman, and music is by Tim Moore. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, stay safe.